Good afternoon. We're here today with Professor Deborah Barreau, who is teaches here in the School of Information and Library Science at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you.
So let's start by telling us a little bit about the many roles that you play here at SILS.
Well, I'm obviously teach on the faculty. I teach both in the graduate program and in the undergraduate program. Advise students, including doctoral students. Advise master's papers, a number of those this year. It's high on my memory right now. I also do research, participate on a couple of research projects. The major one being right now the Willis project, which is looking at careers in library and information science, particularly graduates from the North Carolina schools. And a smaller project with Jane Greenberg looking at what we're calling MEMX 2, memory extender, to try to see how we can design a learning environment to help students in biology, particularly botany. And then, of course, I do service activities, represent the faculty on the faculty council, for example.
Well, bless you for that, and we love to see the reports of those meetings that you send around to on the faculty list. Some of your research has been in the area of personal information management and also in knowledge management. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean by personal information management and then extend it into knowledge management?
Sure. When I talk about personal information management, I mean how individuals collect, organize, use information in their personal space. There are other ways of talking about personal information management, including personal records, and I think the first definition referred to bibliographic systems. So personal information management was how you collected information to put in papers, for example, citations. But for me, it's how that individual works. You can look around my office and you see stacks of things, you see books, there are files and folders. On my computer there's lots of information, and personal information is all about how I collect that, how I organize it, and ultimately how I use it to do my work. In terms of organizations, I think it's becoming increasingly problematic for organizations because there are all these people who make up the organizations. They have their own ways of collecting and using information, but for organizations to I guess use this to advance their knowledge, to be able to develop new products, new services, to be able to reach their customers or decide on new client bases or whatever, they need to be able to maximize the benefits of what individuals know. And as more people are working at home, a lot of the information that they use may be located in various places. So how in the world do we identify what's really important, bring people together and share that information so that the organization can benefit from it? I think that well, I've come to believe that the way you can do that best is by bringing people together and having people interact. That there's been a lot of emphasis on collecting data, data mining, and those kinds of things. But my experience is that people don't use old information in organizations, even when there's stuff there that they might benefit from. And that's largely because the membership changes, people define problems differently, they're not interested in looking backward, they want to look forward. So that kind of indicates that personal information management needs to be current, it needs to support communication. So that's sort of where my interests are going now. The notion of building and sharing expertise. How do you socialize people into the organization, what the organization thinks is important, what the organization wants to be able to do, and then how you get people to talk to each other, to set goals together, to figure out what needs to be done together. And we experience that here as we talk about strategic planning.
Several years ago, you wrote an often cited paper about how people organize their desktops, and that was in the days of pre-web, personal computer, microcomputer kinds of environment. So, how are things sort of different now in terms of the information resources and the technology, and does that make a difference in sort of the way we are able to meet those challenges of personal information management?
It does and it doesn't. I did a follow-up study with those managers that I had talked to, and actually I'm revising a paper now from that conversation. And the personal information management workspace has changed considerably. You know, people refer to things on the web and shared directory spaces on local area networks as though it was their desktop. They can get to it from anywhere anymore. So that means that they don't have quite the same amount of control over information that they might have when they stored things on diskettes and put them in little file boxes that they could pull out and clearly label. So that's changed a lot. Also, the personal life and the work life has become really integrated. I found that even 10 years ago, when I did that early study, more than 10 years now, that there was some of that. Somebody might have their personal resume on their work hard drive, or they might have their husband's resume on their hard drive. But there was still very little of it. Now it's all mixed together, and people work from home, and so on their home computers they have information. So I find that there have been some changes in that environment, that technology where they're always on, they're always expected to be available or whatever. But I've also found that there's a tremendous amount of consistency in some of their behaviors. Even though the technology's changed and would make it easier for them perhaps to develop organizational schemes, they do a lot of what they did before. I'll give you an example. There was one manager who years ago organized all of her files in a directory, and say that the directory would be monthly reports. And so she named the monthly report May 2007. June 2007, that sort of thing. And I went back in here 10 years later, where certainly the dating system could take care of all that. You could organize by date. She still does that. She still puts them in a folder called reports, and then she will say May 2007. She still organizes her correspondence in one place, her reports in one place. Again by form. Even though 10 years later. And I found the same sort of behaviors with other folks, where another manager organized things by provenance before, still organizes things by provenance. So some behaviors are consistent regardless. What makes it difficult, again, is that I found in every case, when you get into shared environments, the behavior changes a little bit. The way files would be named that they're going to share somewhere. They'll follow different rules. And that means that if you needed to reverse engineer, you need to go to their workspace and find something that you're looking for, you might not be able to because they're kind of original and unique in the way they do things.
And do these same sorts of similarities and differences obtain as we move to the corporate or the sort of agency level, where the knowledge management goes across groups and people?
Yes, there's some. I guess all of them referred to these shared spaces, intranets,
Right.
for example, where more and more documents are being kept that are shared. You do find that the language is shared in that space, but not necessarily in the personal space. The personal space doesn't parallel or conform to that necessarily. And of course it makes it difficult for somebody who's coming in from the outside or need to share information with a totally different group or has different processes. That's a little bit harder.
Right.
What are you talking about when you say this or you say that? And I've been looking at this notion of expertise. kind of interested in that with respect to knowledge management. In this MEMEX project, for example, we've talked to biologists who say to us that their goal is to teach the students to think like a botanist. Well, what does that mean? If we could operationalize that, if we could figure out how we could design the laptop that we're all using, how we could integrate tools and integrate information in such a way that you could help them to think like an expert, I think that would be useful. Organizations need that too. They need people to think like engineers for this company, or they need to think like programmers for this company, in terms of, again, embracing the goals of the organization and doing what the organization wants to do. I think that answered your question.
No, that's quite good. You hear a lot about sort of the term knowledge management and how the tacit knowledge as well as the explicit knowledge can be sort of captured, and this challenge of trying to get the expertise that exists in people's heads and bodies is really a tough challenge.
Right, and we focused on, I think, capturing memory. And that the computer is very good for search and retrieval, for finding things. But we really haven't, I think, done a good job of developing tools for analyzing these. And I think there are roles for information professionals that could help organizations to figure out how to analyze this information in this context.
And I'm sure many of the students who are inspired by you in your classes will go on and help many corporations and libraries in the area and beyond do that. Oh, yeah, I think so. So tell us a little bit about the undergraduate courses that you teach.
I just teach one course. It's a required course for the program, Information Use for Organizational Effectiveness. And so it's a little bit of knowledge management. I use Chen-Wei Chu's book, Knowing Organizations. It's a little bit of management, a little bit of project management. So the focus is really trying to help them to see how organizations use information and how they might use it more effectively. This is the fifth time I've taught the class, sixth time, a lot. And I change it every time. This last time I think was the most effective because I engage the students more in discussion. I always try to do that when I give my lecture, but this time the class meets twice a week. The first day is giving them notes. I'm the focus, but the next day that we meet is total discussion. They're the focus. And that has worked really well in terms of dealing with issues and trying to help them see practical applications for some of these ideas. We focused a lot this semester on knowledge management and their, I guess, being sort of integrated more into the school and what that means. And I learned a lot about their needs, things that perhaps we weren't doing as effectively. So it had a practical goal as well, or a practical outcome as well. For me, that's good.
I'll put you a little bit on the spot and recall the situation that happened a week or two ago when your laptop died. So I mean, increasingly we're having these kinds of experiences where so much of what we do and are dependent upon is out there beyond our tangible reach. So what was your reaction, other than sort of frustration, and how that all got resolved, and how did it affect your life for that week?
It's really interesting because I knew the time frame was finite. I think that it was easier to deal with. I have an external hard drive over here, so Scott loaded all of my files there, and anything that I edited, I had a loaner computer, anything I edited went there. So I didn't lose anything, but I couldn't work on it at home because I'm set up for a wireless network at home. It's web-enabled. I didn't want to have to go through the motion of setting this computer up for a few days. So that, I found that different. You know, suddenly I had to adjust to this idea of having to deal with my files here and only here. That can be liberating, but at the same time it meant adjusting my life. But again, because it was temporary, it was okay. I've talked to students about this because they also have experienced, many of them, crashes. And one student a couple of years ago told me that her laptop had crashed so often that she stopped collecting anything. She stopped worrying about saving anything. Well, when you think about, again, what we're trying to do with this project of helping people to draw all of their information together and reflect on it and see how it influences their learning, you know, here was a complete disaster because of the technology. And I don't think that we've solved all those problems. What happens when you get a new computer or an upgrade? Suddenly all of these files either get moved over or you write them off to some external storage, and they're really beyond use at that point.
Something you said earlier about the sort of the freshness and the currency and the socially situated nature of the personal information. It was really quite interesting and important. I think that's often overlooked because so often what we do, at least in our field, is to look at saving stuff from the past. And this is an interesting idea and I think an important one.
I think it is because, well, I make a joke about not going back and reading my old papers. But yet, I'm finding sometimes when I'm playing around with a new idea or thinking of a new research project, going back and looking at something I've done before can be more enlightening than I may have realized. We can do that in terms of searching pretty well. The tools are really good for that. But there aren't good tools for sitting back and reflecting, you know, pulling things up, reminding you of what is in your workspace that might be useful. You know, we just don't have that kind of enhancement tool.
And so if we created a little random file generator that sort of flashed some old file in front of your face, that would be pretty annoying, right?
Yeah, it would be very annoying. It would be very annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the irony is expressed, I think, in a quote from Miles Davis, where he said the best way to stay fresh is to have a bad memory.
Yeah.
And what you're saying here is a little bit of a twist on that, in that, in general, to be creative, you want to have a bad memory. However, there are times when the memories can actually be the stimulus for new kinds of thinking as we do new riffs, if we carry on the musical metaphor on our sort of older ideas.
Right, and just organizing. I find that organizing is a very intellectually stimulating activity. And as I cleaned my office and thought about papers I wanted to read and how they fit into projects that I'm working on now, I mean, that's a very stimulating activity, and we don't really have a good equivalent for that in the electronic world. You know, I'm filing things away, but there's nothing to help me go back and reorganize what's there, to look at what's there and see what's valuable, unless I just make myself do it.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I sometimes wonder what the effects are of the people who sort of adopt the kind of the Gmail model of not without tags, of just putting everything on the heap, because being able to search for just words will get things back. But that's actually not what happens. You miss the richness of the meaning, really, and so. Creating or thinking about at least some better ways to do that in the electronic is a nice kind of long-term research problem. Well, any final thoughts before we wrap up this discussion?
I don't think so. I had made notes, little lists of things that I might say, but I think that's pretty good.
Great. Well, thank you, and continued success in your teaching and research.
Thank you very much.